Let's start with the rapid fire questions. The first one is, at what age do you want to retire?
Hopefully never.
How long does it take you to get ready in the mornings?
Oh, with 2 kids, an hour.
Most embarrassing moment of your life?
Oof. Pass.
Favorite color?
Blue.
What time of day are you most inspired?
Morning. Just a change. Used to not be that way.
How many hours of sleep can you survive on?
Oof. 6.
Fill in the blank. An upcoming technology trend is blank.
AI.
The city in which the best kiss of your life happened.
Seattle.
Pick one, Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg. The biggest mistake of your career.
Ooh. Who knows? But, roads not taken.
How do you relax?
With family.
How many cups of coffee can you drink per day?
2.
A habit of yours that you hate.
Ooh. Pass.
The most valuable skill you've learned in life.
Patience.
Your favorite Netflix show.
Stranger Things.
One word description of your leadership style.
Growth mindset. I know that's 2.
Top priority in your daily schedule.
Creating focus.
Ideal vacation spot.
Beach.
Key factor for maintaining a work-life balance.
Perspective.
Memorable career milestone.
First time as manager.
The last song you've been listening to.
The new Disney movie Wish, and I'm a Star.
Can you sing or hum that song?
Not quite yet.
Okay. The last film that you saw that had a good impression on you.
Well, I'm not sure it's a good impression, but Disney's Wish.
All right, that's the end of the rapid fire. Let's move on to the longer questions, which you can answer with as much ease and time and thought as you like.
Got it.
The first one is, as a VP at Microsoft, managing a big team and lots of products, what's a regular day like for you? How do you manage planning and also leading your team?
Yeah, one of the things I love about my job, not only as a VP, but, in product making, is the day's pretty varied. Some days I'm with, finance and lawyers and biz planning, and other days I'm, with the team planning product. Other days I'm with HR talking culture, and, the needs. Product is a little bit of a Jack and Jill of all trades profession, and I love that. Anytime anybody who's made product knows you have to do whatever it takes to make it successful and be boundaryless, regardless of discipline and skill and the problems of the day. So when it's at my best, I actually feel in control of my day and focusing on hard problems. When I'm at my worst, it's sort of emergency firefighting. And as a VP and as someone that's sort of managed large teams, I often talk to people when you get to this level. It's really about that the company has allowed you to define your own job. And I have people to handle most of the emergencies and most of the day-to-day. And so I get to choose where I spend my time, hopefully on the things that make a difference, that are differentiated, things that weren't going to happen anyways. Because boy, when you have a large organization, things that were going to happen, most things would happen anyways if you have the right talent in place. And so you have to pick those 3, 4, 5 things a year to focus on. And so I think that sort of unlock is really interesting for me in my day. And when I'm at my best, I'm planful of where I spend my time. I don't have knee-jerk reactions to things, and I'm here to make sure things that weren't going to happen anyways really do happen, and the org not only trusts me to do a good job, but trusts me to define my job and trust me to pick my battles well.
How do you decide when to make big plans and when to get into the details of what your team is doing?
Well, yeah, anymore. When I'm at my best, I definitely focus on the strategy, the big picture, and delegate the details, not because they're not important or not because they're not fun, but because that's where a lot of the great work is. And I create the environment. My job is to empower senior leaders. They need the autonomy and they need the ability to go deep. And so, at the times when I try to go deep, if there's someone new on the team to role, that's an awesome time to role model. It's an awesome time to say, hey, I need to provide a little bit of coverage because the person's learning and they need my help. And oftentimes there is, I think when I'm at my best as a leader, there's culture change and there's new things coming. AI is the one right now, right? And so I go deep on AI to tell my team it's important. I have a colleague, Jason, who is very much into being incredibly public about his daily use cases of reading about and using AI. And he does that because he wants to make himself a better employee and a better technologist, but he also does it because he's sending a signal to the team like, hey, you need to adapt. And I've been through many of those changes. AI is the one today. Many years ago at Microsoft, it was about design. This was in sort of the Windows Phone days, which was maybe not a commercially successful product, but it did help teach the rest of the company about what a high design bar means and what it means to engage deeply with the design team and support a design team. And back then we had to do a lot of, we did, trainings on Fridays about what designers need from us as product managers. And that was sort of keeping, seeing where the puck is going and designing that for the team. And so that's another, area where you might go deep. So, riding those waves of trends, people hate change, and people hate ambiguity. And sometimes you have to get into details in a highly ambiguous situation in order to drive that forward and then sort of step back. I do think I try to avoid the seagull mentality of management, which is you're sort of just flying around and pooping on things and then flying away again. That is, I think we try really hard at Microsoft to avoid that with pretty good success.
So overall, what would you say are the hardest parts of your job, and how do you decide to manage them?
Yeah, I mean, I think most people have jobs like mine and say they're intense, hard jobs. It's not about the time. Energy is way more valuable than time. 5 more hours spent at this job is not going to make a difference. Managing my energy level will. I think, I don't know if it's the hardest part of my job, but the one thing I'm certainly need to work on as I have gone from my previous level to this level, conceptually, is signaling support before solving a problem. I'm naturally a problem solver. And I think when you have a job like a VP at big tech or in other areas, sometimes your job is not to say, I'm going to solve this problem, or here's a solution, or I've solved this before. It's just to say, like, I see you, I respect you, here's a cross-team relationship or a different discipline. I know what you need, and I'm here to support you, and I'm trying to get that done. And sounds easy, but it is really hard to be unambiguous about that. And I have found that starting there and saying that that's what that's first, and then we can talk about the 5 times I've solved this problem and the reason this won't work and the reason that won't work. Because the times I've been most understood in my career is where I started solving the problem and not just saying, you know what, I'm going to just be curious about what you need to succeed, and then let's build the trust and then solve the problems later. And as you go up in sort of level in a large organization, that becomes more and more your job, is to remind people that, hey, let's figure out what somebody needs. Let's figure out how to support somebody. And then we can solve a bunch of problems together once we have the trust in place.
And what are some of the memorable failures you guys have learned from, besides you said the Windows Phone? Or
in my own career, I've had times when a similar theme as the last question. Like I have seek to solve problems. I'll give a very specific example. When we were creating something called Microsoft Viva, which is a new suite of tools to help. It's an employee experience platform. It's a set of apps that are bundled together, sold with Microsoft 365 to help companies create a high-performing workforce. Everything from communication tools to survey tools to tools for goal setting. I had been involved in that space for a long, long time. And when we were birthing it, we decided to form a new team that could think about Viva with a fresh lens. And I really struggled with having enough patience to let the new team sort of thrive, find its heart, and not saying, well, I've been involved in this area for a long time. My product can do this, that, and the other thing. And so, that's probably one of my biggest learnings in my career, is in that sense where I basically worked in the same area for 18 years. And so how do I keep that fresh? How do I keep a curious perspective? How do I make sure new ideas and new people involved in the area can feel supported and see the light of day like that? My career is not the only way to succeed, but I have chosen, the unique thing about my career is that I've stayed put in the same team in the same area for a long time. And if you're going to do that, you have to compensate for the disadvantage of that. You have to compensate and figure out um, how to still be curious, high performing, open to new ideas, but also leverage the strengths.
So speaking of keeping things fresh, how did you handle times when you felt tired or not interested in your work, especially when you had big jobs at Microsoft?
Yeah, I surfing that boredom and burnout boundary is really important for me in my career. I'm a really big fan. Most people who report to me would know I draw this on the board all the time. This sort of flow diagram where you can have challenge and your skills. And if challenge and skills are meet in the middle, that's the flow. You can study that. People have studied high performance, athletes that are in the flow. And then, on either side of that, you're either bored or you're stressed and over challenged and you're close to burnout. And I've been on both sides of that. I've had a pretty blessed career that my manager has realized I've been bored before I did and helped me fix that. And I try to emulate that. I try to look for folks on my team who are bored before they realize they're bored. It's sometimes easier for others to detect it than yourself. And then on the burnout side, I took a sabbatical 18 months ago. It was fantastic. I've noticed more people using their sabbatical benefit on my team since I took it. So hopefully that bit of role modeling was helpful. And sometimes you do need perspective. And I think any of us who've been involved in this career long enough would know some of your best ideas come when you're not in the matrix, in the river, in the flow, and you take a step back. And that's certainly been true. So, my sabbatical experience in particular, I felt like I came back stronger, new perspectives, and more well rested. I don't get angry. That's not my sin of emotion, but I do get cynical when I'm at my worst. That's my sort of most critical emotion. And so I try to, I'm aware of that, and I try to detect cynicism in myself and take a step back and just recharge.
So what are some of the things you've been most cynical about recently?
I have not been cynical recently. It has been a tough year, just because it's been, well, hey, we're in a paradigm shift in our industry. This is not status quo. ChatGPT is one of the most successful consumer apps ever to get to the scale it has had, the speed it's gotten, which is exciting. It means it's not time for saying, let's look at 1, 20, 10 other different things now. And for us who work in productivity and collaboration software, it is so clear that what ChatGPT is great for in our everyday lives is going to completely transform collaboration and productivity. And so, not cynical at all, but it's been an intense year because there's been more ambiguity, more higher expectations. Microsoft in particular is, I think, really helped the industry at large digest the opportunity, but with that comes a lot of stress of making sure that we continue to show that leadership, and how do you work with the right intensity, knowing you have this much opportunity in front of you. Flywheels come and go, right? And we're at the beginning of a new flywheel, beginning of a paradigm shift, and it's an ever-repeating cycle in tech. But when you have to act differently when you're in that early stage of the shift. And so helping the team understand that change, helping the team react to that in the face of all the macroeconomic issues that we see going on today, has made it a really intense but a really fun year, because it feels like we're working. I've always felt like I've worked on important things that are really helping hundreds of millions of users, but this just feels like a next level of importance, where we're really figuring something out that could be incredibly transformative.
It seems like it's also been a very intense year for OpenAI itself, with the ouster of the CEO and then rehiring. How do the two companies kind of manage each other in these times?
I have no more knowledge than anybody else. There's been a bunch of public statements and public reporting, and I'd refer everybody to that, because I know nothing that anybody else wouldn't know.
All right, so let's talk about a bit about your knowledge about SharePoint and internal websites. Where do you think these things are going, especially in workplaces and with new tech?
Yeah, it's an interesting mix. People have predicted the death of email. People have predicted the death of websites for many years, with every sort of cycle and paradigm shift, and yet these are very perennial tools. That being said, with the era of AI, it will be very transformational. there is absolutely a role for today's existing button clicking UX and websites. Where is AI going to get trained other than on data and intranets? Like it needs that data, and it needs humans in the loop to be able to get the data to be trained. At the same time, it is exciting. We don't know how, it's early in a paradigm shift, and so there are multiple opinions. There's one opinion that says, you know what, nobody would ever visit a website again. Everything's going to be done through a conversational UI paradigm. We should get, that will be the primary 90% use case. Others on the other side would say it'll be more split. We should integrate that into our existing applications. And I think as an entire industry, we're trying to figure out where the right needle will be set. I think predicting the answer to that question is foolhardy and unnecessary. We should all learn together. We should experiment, and we should go see. And so I'm excited because at the end of the day, I think what a lot of people are doing with conversational UX and copilots and GPTs, especially for knowledge retrieval, is the same business problems, the same scenarios you've seen Microsoft 365, SharePoint, intranets solve. SharePoint's done it several times over the years. Every UX, what I think customers are betting on us, they're not betting on us for a website tool. What they're betting on us is to help them, regardless of the UX paradigm, organize information, have it be retrievable to the workforce, and keep up great UX for surfacing knowledge and retrieving information. And so it's great. It's good to partner with customers and figure out what's working and be part of a really dynamically changing environment right now.
And how do you think AI and machine learning will change these platforms forever, or how people use them?
I mean, absolutely. It's going to make it an awful lot easier to retrieve information. And there will be many use cases, many customers, many organizations where, the primary way you get information on your HR benefits, on your IT web problems, is through talking with a bot or an agent or a copilot. That's phenomenal. And that's, we've all used this over the past 12 months when it can be just an incredible new way, more joyous way of getting information quickly, more accurately, solving more. People don't realize, I think, productivity in general in the productivity software environment, the changes are sometimes pretty subtle, where every day it gets a little bit better. Then you fast forward 5 years and you're, in the previous generation, completely co-authoring and answering chats on your phone. And, I thought when I started my career, it was a CRT monitor. I had no access to any corporate data other than when I was in that room, and I had no mobile phone. And so you look over the course of generational shifts in computing, it has a transformative impact.
And so from that time to today, when you're leading a team of over 40 product managers for hundreds of engineers, how do you encourage a culture where people want to learn and use data to make decisions in your teams? Or what role does instinct play in making decisions?
It's absolutely a mix of both. When I started at Microsoft, it was very instinct driven because we had 3-year release cycles. And so we took a bet, talking with customers, getting some signals, and then spent a year coding, 2 years fixing bugs, shipping, and moving on to the next one. There's some advantages to that in terms of stability and predictability, but fundamentally different in cloud-born and AI-based software making, where it really is about data, about experiments, about A/B testing. And that has been awesome. Data science reports into me. I'm curious about what data science needs to be successful on the team and how they interact with product makers. And it's really been incredibly transformational in the way we create software, where how attuned we are to customers, how rapidly we respond to customers, and the diversity of different signals we have to make decisions. In terms of a learning mindset, I try to really role model that. I try to ask the question of how much percentage of your time on your job should you be learning? And most people go, 5-10%, and I'll take a training twice a year. And no, it should be 80%. The only way, and nobody finds time for training, that is really meaningful. The only way to really have a learning mindset, a growth mindset, is to say it's 80, 90, 100%. You're going to find learning moments through the course of everyday work. It's not just through structured learning, but it's through making sure that every moment, even the tough ones or the easy ones, are learning opportunities.
So speaking of the diversity of decision making, how has working with the community and trying out new things helped Microsoft's products get better?
Community is essential. You know, whether you call it community, whether you call it super fans, a set of folks that have the perspective of being most in the industry would say they're advocates for Microsoft, and they have to represent our work to other stakeholders within their organization. It's a big responsibility for them, and it's a big responsibility for us to empower them and to listen to their feedback. It is different than feedback you'll get from everyday end users. And so you have to recognize and still get feedback from a variety of sources. But for the community in particular, it is an incredibly valid source of an interesting source of synthesized feedback of what it would take for someone, on the ground every day to go champion a particular solution or a particular way of solving things. The feedback from the community tends to definitely be about how do I take these little pieces of features and make them into solutions, and great ideas there. How do I simplify this thing? And how do I think not just about the software, but all the stuff around the product in terms of adoption and guidance, and the fact is, at the end of the day, we're getting humans to try to adopt something, not just sort of slinging technology.
So do you have any example of a time when you had to change your plans because what people wanted had changed, or maybe the industry changed, and how did your team handle that?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that happens quite often. The way we do planning is we do planning every 6 months. We call them semesters. And so we do just enough planning to reduce ambiguity. We don't bother doing planning on things that don't have ambiguity, and we just need to decide on the backlog. And so that's sort of popping our head up every 6 months to sort of get out of the day-to-day and think about a couple big ways of reducing ambiguity. And then, we do monthly or every other week in some teams sprint planning and backlog prioritization. So we're constantly more frequently changing backlogs as we're responding to customer feedback, either some emergencies of something we wanted to handle, so low performance or something like that, or just sort of getting more data in. And of course, like big trends come along. We had a plan in January in our investment, and we rapidly changed that plan when the era of AI hit, and we prioritized, for instance, on the SharePoint team, Copilot and SharePoint. And so, I think we're constantly trying to do that. And it is this balance, because you want some durability, you want some consistency. You can't make big bets unless you create space for multi-year investments. And so you need high conviction before you embark on a multi-year investment. And so you do need that structure to be able to plan. And I've seen teams at Microsoft really struggle when they say they don't need a vision or a multi-year plan, and it's just going to be experiment after experiment after experiment. And that's sort of not successful. You just don't end up taking the big bets that are going to move the needle. On the opposite side, of course, I described earlier our 3-year release cycle, which was way too slow, and you're not reacting to the market. So we really try this Goldilocks approach that tries to balance all those things, having enough structure, but always being willing to say, hey, we'll have the courage to relook at decisions we made when we have new data.
So how do you handle so many different kinds of investments, from big projects to trying out new ideas, while making sure they all fit into what Microsoft wants to do now or later?
Yeah, I think it is a challenge. This is why we spend the right amount of time with backlog synthesis and strategy, where we have framing of investments, everything from sort of keeping the lights on to core performance improvements to new functionality to core innovation. That tends to be the buckets that we look at, and we look very, per team, what ability have you able to do that? If a team is on, 80% just keeping the lights on, and they're a core infrastructure team, great. If they're a UX, envisioning team, not great. And so, we have some checksums around that, and we do use resource allocation to sort of as a final signal for like, do we have that balance right? And then, there's no solution to having multiple things and multiple balls to juggle other than, if you want to have a career in tech, you got to get good at that. And you got to know how to balance that. And then, Satya has been phenomenal at a one Microsoft approach since he took the helm as CEO, and really sort of also at the time of a cloud being born, where the technical, taking a step back, I was responsible for some of the first integrations between Exchange and SharePoint back in the day. These were on-prem software that were doing some combining the two systems together in certain ways. And it was a 24-page manual for IT to set up on how to do it. Technology was actually limiting the amount of sort of one Microsoft approach we could have to the problem. Fast forward today in the cloud, and we have so many shared infrastructure, so many shared services. Technology is not the bottleneck for the amount that we can make pieces of Microsoft work together. It's now a human problem at Microsoft. How many humans can we have work on a V team? How many different, how can we manage the sort of the ability for humans and developers and engineers and designers to interact together? And that's really the limit, which has been fun as a product maker, especially in product management, where that bottleneck can be expanded by great product management that has the good structure there. And so that's been exciting. And it's been clear from Satya on down that customers expect us to help them achieve more, regardless of the tool, the app, or the product boundaries, or the Conway's law, if you're familiar with that. And it's really sort of one holistic Microsoft solution.
Satya has also been talking a lot about hybrid work. So what do you think will change about the way people work from home and in mixed home and office setups? And how does that affect how all the Microsoft experiences need to be made?
Yeah, the key insight I would share is that there is such diversity in the way organizations work. It's probably always been true, but every organization and every culture and country has sort of adopted a different approach to hybrid work. It is clearly here to stay, but there's granularity and diversity in how people approach it depending on where you live and what your norms are. And that is changing even within an organization. And so Microsoft's approach is really not to dictate one way of working. Hybrid work is here to stay. I love the flexibility. I love, going to a coffee shop for an hour and answering emails on my phone or Teams chats. I love being able to join meetings from anywhere. And that's a flexibility I prize incredibly deeply. And so making sure there's technology infrastructure that enables that is great, but we're not prescribing one way of working. We're just sort of enabling organizations to adapt to their particular environment, times, and cultural norms. And the biggest organizations that are multinational will have different expectations and norms even within their organizations. And so I think Microsoft really tries to take a partnership approach. And it's an area where we really try to lead, not just with the technology, but with best practices. We have something called our Work Trends Index, which really is looking at signals in Microsoft 365 as well as external surveys, and really trying to share with the world, how hybrid work is going and what are different working practices and what's working and what's not. And so you can rely on Microsoft not just for the technology, but for the holistic solution as well as the thought leadership on the various approaches.
But technology is always changing. How does your team in particular keep up with new things and trends? And what do you do to make sure Microsoft is ready for the future?
Yeah, it's an important part of the job. I mean, we do have hackathons. Every once in a while, we take time off to just hack. We actually call it fix, hack, or learn. You can fix a bug that's been bugging you. You can hack, to try a new technology, or you can learn about a new technology. And that's unstructured time. Your boss isn't going to tell you what to do. But rather it's something that you get to be self-directed, and some of the best ideas come out of these FHL projects, we call them, and some of the emerging trends come out of people that have found the mental space to be able to during FHL to be able to research new things. At the end of the day, I think it's part of the culture. We have a growth mindset culture, and a learn it all, not a know it all culture, and we reinforce how that's important. And it applies in many ways, but it certainly applies to keeping up with technology. I think one of the most unique things about Microsoft is our ability to thrive in the ever repeating cycles of technological innovation, and that is high ambiguity, scary at times, but is fundamentally, I think, from Satya on down, embedded in our mission. And our growth mindset is to help partner with customers through that. That's how we establish trust with customers, that they know that we're going to help them through the changes in culture and environment and technology, regardless of where it leads.
So to what extent do you feel the exponential pace of tech evolution is more suitable for smaller companies compared to bigger companies like Microsoft, or is that a myth?
I think we've had I will say, look at this year of 2023, and I think Microsoft has been able to partner across the industry with many players, and had a really meaningful way of moving fast and responsibly and with the right critical thinking about the impact we're having on a bunch of different stakeholders. And so I'm pretty proud of that. And I think innovation can come from many corners of the industry. It can come from larger companies. It can come from smaller ones. I think when we all work together best is when we make sure that the best ideas are, seeing the light of day.
So would you still think we're living in the wild west of technology, or do you think that is way past and it's a different environment now?
I don't know. I think there's always exciting new technologies to look at. And I think it takes a lot of judgment and experience to figure out, which ones are durable. And I think that will always be true. I think those who want to work in the tech industry can find really exciting places new. The folks can find more stability if that's what they want. One of the things I've always loved about the tech industry is just how diverse it is. There's always sort of one industry that tends to be, I think, where you get a lot of that diversity and choice over what gives you purpose and the types of stuff you can work on. And I think tech is a great industry to get into if you want a lot of flexibility of what you work on, a lot of choice. And you can be motivated by the most bleeding edge technology. You can be motivated by things that sort of are helping change the world. You can be motivated by things that are just helping people have that ever repeating cycle of productivity improvements. And that's cool.
So where do you get all your tech news from? Is there any particular newsletter you want to highlight, any media outlet?
I mean, I like many people, I look at Tech Meme quite a bit. I'm not sure it's tech news, but I do run a Substack with my wife, which is pretty awesome. I think we talk about how to thrive as two product makers with two kids. We do talk about the best of product making. We talk about some thriving as parents as a little bit. And it's been really fun, actually, to be a writer and a Substack author and share it with others and be part of sort of the community of product makers who also run, blogs and Substacks.
Right, so the last question for you is of a personal kind. What would you be doing in your life if not all this?
It's a good question. I'd like to think I'd be doing this. I don't do this because I do this. I found my way to this through careful examination and choice and trade-off. If you force me to pick a different profession, I'd love to write science fiction novels like that. I recharge by disconnecting from reality a little bit, and I've always been fascinated by that. Not to get all meta on you, but I considered when times are tough, should I not do this and be an author instead? And it's just while I'm excited by it and I try to fit hobbies into my life, I like what I'm doing, and I like the set of trade-offs that it makes. And I also love the fact that I've spent a long time getting good at something. And, I want to be a science fiction author, like many people who try to do hobbies and realize, oh, well, I spent 10 years getting good at something else. And I actually really, really like the being an expert at something. And so, like many people sort of midlife, that's sort of been something I've thought about and struggled with, did blog about it on the Substack. But yeah, that's always a trade-off I think we all make.